Warning. The following scenes may contain references to power pages and portals which some listeners may find disturbing, especially if you've struggled with poor training in the past. Hey all, Franco Musso here. Yes, I've hacked your podcast feed. I've held John and Mike hostage, but don't worry, I got my wires crossed and I'm actually paying them a small ransom in the form of sponsorship. Anyway, big announcement. I'm finally releasing my online Power Pages course. This has been 5 years in the making. It's tried and tested on citizen devs and portal makers all around the world. It's the course I wish existed when I was getting started. It's practical, it's hands-on, and it's project-based, so you're not wondering how the heck this would apply to the real world. I've built in battle-tested lessons I've learned from tens of successful portal projects across various industries, budgets, and geographies, and I've formulated the most efficient route from zero to heroic launch. The tools and techniques I've chosen to show you are all based on what adds the most value to you, the learner, and to your customers, all in the most compressed timeline possible. Think 80-20, focusing on the techniques that punch above their weight and deliver the majority of results. You'll get video lessons, a repeatable framework, and some super helpful worksheets. Visit francomusso.com/power-pages-course and register your interest. Disclaimer, this course isn't for you if you prefer hours of slides, theory, and little to no action. You can now take your fingers out of your ears and enjoy the awesome that is Sprint Zero.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Sprint Zero podcast. My name is Mike Gowland and I'm here with my co-partner rat in crime, Jon Russell. Say hello, Jon.
Hello, Mike. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm okay.
We've had a bit of a hiatus, right?
We have had a hiatus. The episodes have been flowing through, but hospital was not fun. Let's put it that way. Measles is not fun. But apart from slightly bloodshot eyes, I'm out the other end.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say, like, there's loads of people been checking up on you, as you know, and everyone wishing you, all the best and hope you're good. But I know that you're good now. But just wanted to say that. All right.
Thank you, everyone. So today we're joined by David Wyatt. David is a senior staff engineer at TJX Europe, and I believe that's TK Maxx. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Where he's their current subject matter expert in Power Automate and Power Apps, supporting rollout and management of the platform, along with developer best practices and training. Welcome to the Sprint Zero podcast, David. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me on today. Excited to catch up with you guys.
No problem at all. Pleasure to have you.
So, like, the first thing we normally ask our guests is, like, kind of, how did you get here? Really, how did you get into Power Platform? And and your I know you love Power Automate, which is something that I love as well. Although it can be a tricky beast at times, as Mike has witnessed my sweary episodes. But how did you get into Power Platform, David?
Well, I would say I wasn't definitely not invited. I was kind of what you would call shadow IT back in the day. So I was the guy who would take Excel and VBA and do things I really shouldn't do with it. If IT were too busy, somebody would come and ask me and I would spin something up. So it's kind of like I was that guy who wanted to be in IT but wasn't in IT. And one day, I'm that type of person who clicks on buttons and looks around. There was a flow icon in the Microsoft My Apps. And I was like, oh, what's that? So as you do, you click on it, open it up, and you start clicking around. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. All the stuff I do in VBA, which is painful and hard work and it often breaks, this is so much quicker and easier. And even better, I don't have to open my laptop up, log in and run it. I can schedule this. So I was suddenly going, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And I was investing all my spare time into automating literally my life. And before you know it, you're getting hours back, left, right, and center. And then you discover Power Apps, and it's like, oh my God, this is even more interesting. I can do more things. So I was there playing away. And I always remember, I was on a trial license, and the trial ended. It said, I'm sorry, your Power Automate trial has ended. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And I just clicked OK, and it still worked. And I was like, oh. So I continually kept extending this trial until one day somebody emailed me and said, oh, hi, I'm administrating the Power Platform. Who are you and what are you doing on my platform? We've not rolled it out yet. And it was kind of that kind of conversation. I was like, oh, well, I did this, I'm sorry. And they were like, oh, what have you done with it? And I was like, oh, I've done this. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And that's kind of my first step in the door, was literally by being that person who got in there when I probably shouldn't have.
Yeah, nice. I think that's quite important what you said about like you being kind of shadow IT, because I think shadow IT, although it gets a bit of a bad rap sometimes, they're the kind of bridging persona between IT and the business, and can kind of speak in both camps. Because I have a pretty similar story to you. That's kind of how I discovered Power Automate, and yeah, it was pretty much I was doing things to kind of help automate my life as well as other people's, and kind of doing it under the radar. But you get kind of like you get kind of advantages and disadvantages from both sides, but then it allows you to speak to both sides of the fence, right?
Yeah, the best thing about shadow IT for me is the close to need, because you are the person in theory either using it or your colleagues are sat next to you, and you understand the system and you understand the challenges. You make the right solution. Whereas often if you try and get another team to do it, you can get lost in translation and there's challenges and things. So being really close to the point of need makes it really successful. The problem is, and I remember thinking times in the past, is you can be very lonely. And I remember spinning up a solution and the pressure and thinking, what am I doing? I'm a one-man wagon of designing my solution, doing my requirements, building it, testing it. All the queries when it doesn't work comes to me. And it can get very... And then you realise why you have an IT team and not IT individuals. So there's pros and cons. And generally, my experience is it's great at the beginning. And then over time, the burden, and because it's baggage, you never unload it, you never pass it on. Yeah. So I always say to everybody, getting into shadow IT and citizen development is a similar thing. It's great at first, but be wary. It just can go on and on and on.
And what does your role look like now at the moment? Are you still in that kind of shadow IT role, or is it slightly different to that now?
Yeah, I transitioned across. I was very lucky by getting in with the right people and kind of talking and then using what we call a federated model where it was kind of hybrid work. I then moved across into the IT, into the intelligent automation space. So that's our way of enabling low code for the business kind of. So then, yeah, so I've been there about 2 years now, actually, as a full-time IT. And that's been the big drive for like the Power Platform kind of growing. My role came at the right time, if that makes sense.
Nice.
So, David, I just want to go back to a point you made about if you want to get into shadow IT and if you want to get into citizen developer or a citizen developer role or position, and actually just to like be wary that you get lonely and whatnot. Would you say that actually if you're looking to go down that path, you need to be looking further ahead than just that position? Do you need would you say that you need an action plan for the next 2 or 3 years or so to transition from that to something?
Yeah, you have to make a decision. Is this just going to be a personal side thing that you do small? But if you want to do it more, then I definitely think you have to think a little bit long term and try and reach out. From an IT side, the challenge they have is not knowing. And it must be quite frustrating when these things bubble up out of nowhere. So I wish back in the time that I'd been a little bit more like, listen, I've made this and going to IT. And that would have helped them to see what I'm doing. And they might have said, well, don't do that, do this, we can help you and prepare. So for me, it's about trying to like I say, look ahead, where do I want to be? Who do I need to get in contact? How can I make it more sustainable?
And I guess a lot of that is down to the culture of your organization, right? Because you might go to your IT and say, look, I built this, and they just completely shut you down. And they don't want you to be enabled to build that automation or build that app or build that solution. They actually want to bring it all in-house and do it themselves. But others would actually be really supportive, and they have that almost like network of I think we call it champions networks, where you build up citizen developers and they knowledge share and actually they go off and build their own solutions. So I guess it's a lot of it's down to like the culture of where you are as well.
Absolutely. And if the culture of the organization is against it, I'd be very wary of it, because it's just not a great place to be in that area. If you get sponsorship from outside IT, there's other sides of it. Your leadership or your business team might be able to help, and you go to them to get to those conversations. But I will always say to everybody, like the worst thing I had about being a shadow IT was the baggage. It comes with you. You change role and it comes with you, because then you do it. And that role that the person who replaces you in that role doesn't have that in their job description. So how can they take it?
That's it. Yeah. So, Dave, we've just come out at the end of Microsoft Build recently. Were there any standout announcements for you?
Well, for starters, I love the new laptop.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
I've been excited for that. That's pre-ordered already. That was the thing that
Is that with the Copilot button?
Yes.
Did you get me one as well, David? I think we chatted about it. Buy one, get one free, I think.
That would have been amazing. I mean, I've been excited for the idea of kind of ARM on Windows. I got the original ARM Surface many years ago, which was a
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So I've been, ever since Apple have done it, I've been excited for that. So yeah, that was my exciting bit. I personally was a little bit disappointed. It seemed a little bit too much Copilot-y. I like Copilot, but I don't think it's what everybody talks about it. I don't think it's going to change the world as much as people think. There was two things I really loved. The YAML in Power Apps, code. Oh, that's exciting to me. That allows you to expand it and kind of go on that journey. That one's really exciting. And then the security stuff on the Power Platform, being stuff like having the security portal, being on VPN properly. I like a lot of security stuff on the Power Platform, and I think people need to treat it with a little bit more respect and understand that it does have potential. So those two are quite exciting for me.
Controversial question. Do you think Copilot is maybe distracting us from some of the wider problems in, say, Power Platform or other Microsoft products that just aren't getting addressed?
Yeah, yes, and that's probably why I'm a little bit. But I think Copilot technology is amazing, and I think it's brilliant. But I also think that perspective a little bit is so. Like the way I looked at things, like in your job, there's two things in your job. There's the mundane, repetitive things that kind of you do, and then there's kind of the off-kill, interesting, creative side. Generally, you don't like the first one, you enjoy the second. And that's why I love automation. That takes away the repetitive, boring stuff. RPA and Power Automate, I love it. That to me is brilliant. And then I go to stuff like Copilot, or when it does stuff like searching for data, like chatbot, finding this. I love that. That's mundane stuff I hate doing.
Yeah.
But when it's suddenly coming to this, why I ask and it creates me a flow. Well, I like creating the flows. That's the creative bit. That's the bit I enjoy about my one. I don't want that bit to go. So I'm kind of thinking, the creativity side of it is something that you don't want to take away from somebody's job role.
Yeah. So there was a quote recently about.
Are you going to talk about that LinkedIn post? Because that's exactly what I was going to talk about.
It's the one where they say,
I want AI to do my
laundry and
so I can
do my
art and music.
Yeah, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And I commented on that, and I seriously mean this. One of my absolute bugbear things to do in this house is take the rubbish out. I absolutely loathe doing it because the bag always splits, or there's something in the bin, and it doesn't help that my wife, and it's fair enough, my wife just hates doing it because she's very adverse to anything like that. So my thing is, create something that can take the bins out, and I'll go and get two of them, one for the recycling and one for the rubbish. Like that to me is, those are the jobs that I don't like doing. And you're exactly right about what you're saying about, removing that creative element. It feels a bit like that's the wrong area. It's the wrong area of focus. I totally agree with you.
I think the argument's always been with this technology though is that, and the reason why they've called it Copilot is that it's not autopilot, so it's not designed to do all the art for you. It's not designed to do all the writing for you.
Yes,
it's there to complement and help you, but I think there are those people, and I think we've talked about it before, that over rely on the technology, right?
Yeah,
and they'll write their whole articles with the technology and maybe not even proofread them, and you can spot those a mile off.
Yeah.
I have a thing which I always call like the low code dilemma and the problems with what low code, and I think Copilot and low code are very similar. And if you want to be like a developer, like a pro developer, you need to have like the time, you need to have maybe the mindset to code, and you need passion. You need that combination. The problem is a lot of people might not have the time, and they might not necessarily be great with code. They might be good with UIs. So low code comes along and says, guess what? You've got the passion and you can do it, and we are enabling you to do it. The problem with that is you're also enabling people without the passion to do it. So what you end up then doing is lots of people who don't care, not passionate, don't put any effort into it, just using it to spit out. And I think it was Stephen Mordeau's pile of I think this one is that to me is very much what I worry about with Copilot, is that you just get spammed with lots of solutions that aren't needed, or no passion, no engagement, no value in them. So
and no thought put into them either, right?
Yeah.
And we get that with GitHub Copilot as well, which is just, spitting out code. If you don't check it, if you don't understand what that code's doing,
but I also
the problem.
And it's all about, I always call it like the learning curve or barrier to entry. There needs to be a small barrier that forces people to kind of invest and put effort in, and then know that they're going to put effort into it. If anybody can walk in and make something, they're going to put that much effort into it. And what I like about low code in particular is you can go in, there's a low barrier to entry, but the more you want to do, the more you have to learn, and put more effort you get in. The more effort you get in, the more value you get. So you kind of have this nice feedback loop. And I'm very wary that if Adobe Copilot comes along and just says, types in, make me do this, we would end up with piles of automations or things that don't add value and just kind of make other stuff harder to see. So I love the idea of Copilot. I just think it needs to be, it's not the solution for everything, and we need to stop pushing it everywhere.
I think there's also a differentiation in the product, I think, which, like, you've got Copilot, which sits in like Word and, app-based Copilot. And then you've got Copilot Studio, and I've noticed that a couple of people getting confused between the two a little bit. And I understand it's a big push on the word Copilot. I get that, but I think I want to see what happens with Copilot Studio. I have a feeling that that's going to get broken out of the Power Platform itself, potentially. I think that's what's probably going to happen. I
totally agree. I can see the Power Platform splitting into three. Power BI and Fabric want to go one way, and Copilot potentially the other way. But like you say, Copilot Studio is very different, and Copilot Studio to me solves that kind of mundane problem. I'm in an app and I don't know how to do something. I hate looking at a guide or searching for documentation. That's mundane. That's when it's brilliant. But if I then, like in Word, when I ask it to make my report or do my PowerPoint, well, that's the creative side. I don't want that bit personally.
But you might want it to. I mean, this is the argument, isn't it? You might want it to give you the framework, the starting point, and then you add the creativity on top.
Exactly.
But where a lot of it, I think, where a lot of our like angst with this comes in is that it takes away that creativity as well. If it literally does it all for you, so. Does Copilot need to get better?
But it goes back to this use case. If you're passionate about it, you use it in the right way. If you're passionate about what you're doing, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then you're just going to abuse Copilot to do as much as you can. Right? And that's where that line of how you do it right. I think Copilot and GitHub is brilliant because it gives the mundane like schemas and testing and helps you.
Yeah, I do like GitHub Copilot. I remember when Mike showed me that for the first time, and I was like, "Ooh, okay." That was a bit like when I saw Power Automate for the first time. I was like, "Right, okay, that's pretty game changing." So I know you're a big fan of Power Automate, and I'd say I'm a big fan as well. Why do you like it so much? Do you think?
There's a couple of reasons. One, the learning curve in Power Automate is absolute perfection. You can go in there and add value with very little knowledge, but then you can grow and learn and scale it and get better and better and better. So I love that anybody can get value from it. Somebody with very small effort, or somebody who can put effort into there. And the other side of the equation is it just works. It's all API driven and it's very good. Once 99 times out of 100, if you build your flow right, it will never have any issue. It will just run with zero effort, and you can leave it. Whereas back in my days, we talked about shadow IT, XLV based stuff would always go wrong. I'd always have to tweak the code changes and stuff. So I love that kind of side to it.
Nice.
And what about you, John? Why do you love Power Automate so much?
I just love how visual it is. Like I'm a massive visual learner, always have been, and I just like how clear it is. It's clear and concise, and I just kind of understand it. There's not many things I would say in a technical sense in my history I've found as easy to get to grips with than Power Automate, I'd say. Yeah. And like you say, David, there's like a, the learning curve is pretty good, and you can go, pretty much vertical if you want to.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's all based on APIs, it's very programmatic, and in the background, obviously. I think sometimes the errors that you get sometimes can be a bit tricky to understand, but you kind of get there in the end with trial and error. But yeah, apart from that, I think everything. Oh well, apart from that, and maybe the question that Mike's going to ask you now.
I was just going to say, what you don't like is the new designer, right, John?
No, just don't like it.
What are your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I was in that band quite hard. I remember like a few months ago, and this was it was the journey of it that kind of annoyed me a little bit. I remember where everybody talked about it, excited about it, and I opened it up and I was like, well, it doesn't do half the stuff I want, but fine, it's in preview. And then one day I came in and it was general release, and it was default, and it was hard to turn off. And I was like, well, this is annoying me now because it's not ready and you're forcing it on me. It felt a little bit like trying to get Copilot out. They would push it because it had to get Copilot out. They pushed it out. And I was looking and I was like, you can't copy and paste. You can't undo. You have to put compose in to do this. You have to do that. And I was like, this is my workflow. I work on this, and this is going to slow me down and impact my life because you're pushing out a product that's not ready. So I was in very much frustrated camp. And that put me in a situation where I was like, I really don't want to use it. I even built a Chrome extension to force it off because I was frustrated with it. So I get where they're going, and I've spoke to the product team, and to be fair to them, I can see their vision and stuff, and I like where they're going. For me, it was the landing that was really bad. They launched it not ready, not fit for purpose, and that has just left a bad taste, which means that every time I try it, I'm just reluctant now. So
and for people that are visual learners like me, it was a very big change very quickly, and I suppose there's not really any other way that you could have done that. Being fair to them, I don't think there was a different way that you could have done that. But yeah, I just know that I need to bite the bullet and get stuck into it, and then I'll probably be all right. But yeah, I find it really difficult. I find it quite challenging.
I found it quite interesting what you said, David, about the new designer and trying to be pushed out like Copilot. But do you really think the new designer was pushed out because of Copilot? Because isn't Copilot for Power Automate only compatible with the new designer?
That's what I mean. I think they wanted to get Copilot into general release, which meant the new UI had to go into general release.
Right.
The new UI wasn't ready.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, and that's how I could imagine that. Again, this is me, because I can imagine that pressure on the team, which is we need to launch Copilot. It needs to be in general release. And they're like, it's probably not ready yet. And I don't mind the preview functionality. I like that. If you want me to beta test something, fine, put it in preview and I can choose it. But when you force it on me and you make it the default, and I'm like, this is not ready, that is frustrating a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
But they turn around and say, well, because they can switch back to the classic designer, then it should be acceptable.
Yeah, but it's...
And there was something...
It's not.
I mean, I don't know if it's the same now, but there are some things where, like, for instance, the delay action, I could never get that to open and expand inside in the new UI. I had to go back to the classic to set that. And there's a couple of other things I've seen. I think Damien Bird put something out recently about an API request that he'd sent to OpenAI, and it had come back, and there was nothing in the request body for a piece of content that he'd sent. So that he raised. So yeah, I mean, it's enough to make me not use it.
Exactly. And now I've lost the excitement now. When it came out, I was excited. I like the idea of the zoom out, the kind of a bigger view. Those bits I really liked about it. And now I'm a little bit like, the drafts, I guess, is going to force me into having the publishing drafts. I will eventually bite the bullet. But that's how they should have launched it. They should have launched it feature parity with new stuff, and then make me want to use it. Don't force it on me.
Yeah, they've completely lost the adoption piece on that now, haven't they?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've listened to any of these podcasts before, but we have a section on here called Uncomfortable Corner.
Yes.
Uncomfortable Corner.
I'll miss that. I'll miss your screams, Mike. So, David, when was the last time you felt uncomfortable in or outside of work? And maybe if you could explain how you felt, how you kind of managed to get through it and what you learnt about yourself or others in that.
And it can't be about trying to get out of that new designer for Power Automate.
Yeah.
I guess like there was one I kind of put that just for, which was quite a while back, but it's an interesting journey where I went on. See, I guess like what you find in IT, and especially with like Power Platform stuff, is I'm a not particularly high seniority, but I'm dealing with potentially senior people using the platform, the citizen developers. And I was in a situation where somebody had been doing some really good solutions, spinning up like good flows and apps. But when I looked into it, they weren't in a good place from like, compliance, so like security, documentation, standards and things like that. So trying to have that conversation where you're like, listen, you're doing good stuff, but you need to follow these rules. And they were like, who is this guy? And then he's trying to ruin my workflow. I've got these plans. I've got this working really efficiently. And it quickly became, I wouldn't say confrontational, but became challenging, where I thought they were trying to, be awkward. And I now know, looking back, they knew I was trying to be awkward. I'm coming in there and telling them to change things. And all the meetings and all the conversations were very uncomfortable, because we were coming in there as if we were like trying to win. It was more like, I want them to follow my process and they will want them to deliver value quicker and more for their side of it. And I remember that, like, each of those meetings, like when they came up, the drop in dread in your stomach, like, I don't want to deal with this anymore. And kind of at the end of this was when, like, I spoke to my leadership all the time, and they were like, listen, you're doing a great job. I'll support you. Keep going. And eventually it was in a meeting with other developers in the room, and those developers, more senior developers, just basically said what I said without kind of like knowing or the argument. And I think then the penny dropped, but the other person was like, well, this is going to happen no matter what. And then everything turned and the relationship became very good. I helped support the move. And the thing is, they're a great team. They were delivering really good solutions. And now, like, we've got a really good relationship. And that was all down to the fact that, looking back on me, was I went in there with the expectations that they would just do what I need, because I've got the rule book and I'm doing the right thing. And I didn't think about how they felt or their impacts. And yes, it was a big learning experience for me. And it made a whole process, which could have been a lot easier, very uncomfortable.
So how would you have done that? How would you have done that differently?
I think the key thing for me would have been is to go and sit down with them and go, right, talk me through everything you do, all your processes, all your value, show off, celebrate what they've done first.
Yeah.
And then take them on the journey of, right, well, this is why we do these things. How can we implement it in a way that doesn't impact your workflow as much? And that was always my idea. But because I went in the wrong first step, you never kind of got back into that right process.
David, have you ever heard of a concept called radical candor?
No, I've not heard that one.
I think we've talked about it on the show before, and I know I've read it sort of the start of this year. It's a book, and John, I think you've read it fairly recently.
Yeah.
And it's all about how you can be candid in your the way you speak to people, so that you're on this like level agreement that you're not coming in and trying to make changes or force something upon someone, or like if you're giving feedback, it's not an attack on them. It's that you want them to do better. There we go. John to the rescue. Yeah, there's this really good quadrant as to like where you can put yourself. So if you're giving radical candor, then there's that. But you can also have obnoxious aggression, manipulative insincerity, and ruinous empathy. And I think the obnoxious aggression is like, is that the asshole area, John? I can't remember.
Yeah, so that's where you challenge, but in a way that you probably don't know the person very well, and you don't know what they're going through. And there's another thing that I spoke about with someone recently. It's called the energy investment quadrant, which is similar to this, but the top right is the cynic. So the top right is the player and the bottom right is the cynic.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of cynics on a team, that can really have detrimental effect to the rest of the team. But you also need to be careful with your players that are in the top right-hand quadrant, because they're the ones that are likely to get burnt out quickly. So you have to kind of keep a nice balance. Yeah. That book is very interesting. It's very easy to read. I highly recommend it. She's also done I think she did a TED talk on it as well.
Yeah.
And she was in kind of quite senior people role at Facebook and Google and a couple of other places.
Yeah, Google, Microsoft, Apple. I think she was at Apple as well, wasn't she? Yeah.
Nice.
That looks pretty good.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today, David. It's really nice to meet you. And congratulations on your MVP, by the way. Sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, there's actually two things. Firstly, we need to congratulate David on his MVP award, so congratulations. And secondly, I want to read your T-shirt.
Oh, this is my
It's been popping up from the bottom of the screen. And
yeah,
I can see it's Power Effects, but
I made my own coffee Power Effects
expression.
There's the JavaScript one, and I wanted, so I was a bit of a. I went and made
very
my
good,
own,
very good.
So for the listeners, it's got, is it an effect? Yeah. So if it's empty cup, collect cup with a record fill coffee, and then collect cup, drink coffee.
Yeah. It's the old JavaScript one, I think it is one where like if coffee empty fill up, so
yeah.
We could do it in Power Effects.
There's no error handling on that though, is there?
No, not really. I will spell my own code with you.
So thank you very much, David, for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it. You can find David on LinkedIn, Twitter, and on his blog. Links of those that we've mentioned will be in the episode show notes. Music today was provided by our friend Ken Like Fit. You can find his music on Spotify. Again, links to that will be in the show notes, and any additional music. Although I think we didn't have any today, so you never know.
No.
Might add something in post. And so be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss the next episode. And we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a follow on LinkedIn. And if you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a cheeky 5-star review on your chosen podcast platform. That's quite hard to say. Thank you very much. This has been Sprint Zero, and we've been Mike Gowland. Say goodbye, Mike.
Goodbye, Mike.
And David Wyatt. Say goodbye, David.
Goodbye.
And I'm John, and we'll see you on the next episode of Sprint Zero. Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you, John.
Love you, Mike.
Love you, David.
Thank you.
Warning. The following scenes may contain references to power pages and portals which some listeners may find disturbing. Especially if you've struggled with poor training in the past.
Hey all, Franco Musso here again. Quick update on that hostage situation. Hopefully the smell isn't coming across the airwaves. I haven't let the guys use the bathroom yet, so the joke's definitely on me. Anyway, big announcement. So, by popular demand, join me and a cohort of other budding portal makers for live coaching sessions, weekly live training, office hours, Q&A and surgeries. I'll guide you through the process from zero to launch, all at a fraction of the cost of hiring a freelancer or a contractor. It's like having a trusted partner on hand, helping you avoid the pitfalls, saving you a ton of money, headache and time. Plus, you're bound to learn lots from others in the group as we discuss their experiences, challenges and solutions. To apply, head on over to francomusso.com/group-coaching.